Another dub for the Trojans, now sitting at 5-0, coach, and a bounce back Saturday, certainly for your offense. I saw some great stats. One of them, 8 of 9 on third down. You end up. I'm sure that makes you feel good. What's the key there? What did you see? Is it getting the shorter third downs, or what was it caused for the efficiency on third down?
Yeah, we had a little bit of everything there. A couple of longs that we were able to make some plays on and convert, and then we've done a good job so far up to this point on short yardage. That's been a strength of our offense, and it was important. You know, the way the game played out, it was a very low possession game. I mean, I think our offense had 8 possessions in the game, which is really low. And so with that, you got to make the most of them, and we were able to do that largely in part because of our efficiency.
Coach, I was watching the game last night with Kansas City Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes was out there, and he's creating. And I'm thinking about Saturday, how Caleb was out there kind of creating some stuff, creating some magic. How much of that is you when you're play calling, like, hey, maybe some creativity is built into this play a little bit, where he can kind of, there's a little bit of wiggle room for him to extend plays or figure that out. Is that built into it? Is it not? Do you not want that? Where's that lie?
Yeah, no, it's definitely built in. I mean, there's definitely some things we do to take advantage of his athleticism and ability to make plays. The first touchdown to Mario was an example of that, and then there's a few. I know maybe the second third down conversion of the game where we got beat and he just made a play, and he's a guy you can take advantage of that. You feel like in those one-on-one situations you can strategically put him in those, and he's going to win more often than not, and so we don't run him a ton, but we try to be smart about when we can and when we can use him and use his legs and use that creativity, because it is a great weapon for us.
What's his mindset last week, and where that's coming from is, doesn't play his best ball against Oregon State. You mentioned the pitcher reference, and maybe he didn't have his best stuff that night. But then he always just seems like it's all good. It's low key. He's going to get the next play. But I envision there's got to be a fire in him that has an edge, that he wants to go out and show that he can bounce back. What was that week of practice like last week for him, and what's his mentality in a situation like that?
It was a complete week. I mean, I think it was a week of it wasn't panic. I mean, it's a guy that's a naturally confident guy and a guy that's been there before, and so it felt like that. I mean, I think we identified quickly the areas that we needed to improve on, and we really zeroed in on those, and he did a good job responding. And I think, going back and watching the Oregon State stuff, I think the thing we saw was a lot of it was under our control and his control, and a lot of it is things that are not, I say easily correctable. We know what the fix is, and then you just got to go work on it, and then you got to commit to it on Saturdays. And so he had a good week of working on it, committed to it on Saturday, and played well for us.
Another stat that stood out to me this season: you're 55 to 7 in third quarters. This was obviously a big third quarter. You talked about it with us after the game. But what does that stat tell you on the whole about the way your team is responding to whatever's happening at halftime?
That's important. It's a quarter that a lot of times gets overlooked, right? People start talk about how you start games, and certainly that's important, and how you finish in the fourth quarter. Obviously, that's the only quarter that you can win the game, but that third quarter, a lot to me, is so much about the momentum of the game, and can you no matter what happened in the half, can you go in there, catch your breath, reset, refocus, and then come out and regain it quickly? Because the beginning of the third quarter, these guys at a test doesn't feel like the beginning of the game, right? The beginning of the game, you hadn't had a snap yet. There's all kinds of energy everywhere, and then the beginning of the third quarter, a lot of places doesn't feel like that. Normally it's the beginning of the third quarter, and then it kind of rises up into the fourth quarter, and you feel that same feeling again. And so, our ability to make adjustments, to come out with a good mentality and play well has obviously been key in several of these games. It was very important. Probably of any game, it was most important the other night, because of how we finished the half, and we weren't excited about how we played defensively in the first half. We knew and as a team, we needed to have a better edge and come out and play. Obviously, there were some mistakes, but we have to come out and play with the mentality that we expect, because when your mentality's right, you get kind of that focused intensity, and you a lot of times you don't make as many mental mistakes, and that's what we saw. I mean, defensively, I don't know that there was anything just superhuman in the second half, but we we didn't bust calls. We got lined up quickly, and we played very, very active on the front. And the entire game, especially from a defensive point of view, changed after that.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like a bigger edge they had on defense. Coach, offensively, the offensive line may have struggled, but they've been beat up a little bit. Justin Dedich out of the lineup, and the left tackle's been kind of banged up a little bit. How did they grit out?
We had some guys that played really well. We thought Nealon played well. Voorhees played well. Jonah Monheim continues to play very well. Those guys have been steady for us. I thought Gino Quinones did a good job. He came in. It's probably the best set of interior defensive linemen that we've played all year. Not probably, it is. Yeah. So to come in and get your first start, against a good group like that, he held his own. He got beat a couple of times, but he did some really, really good things. We were proud of the way that he played. We're still, kind of seeing how that left tackle spot will play out. I mean, we definitely need that spot to continue to grow for us. We got back to a little bit of rotation in that game, and then stuck with Bobby in the second half. And so, we did a lot of really, really good things. We were close a lot. A couple times that we didn't protect, it really hurt us. Obviously, the big one was the big touchdown to Mario right before half. And we can play more consistent, but it was a good challenge. I mean, that's one of the more talented fronts that we'll play. I mean, without a doubt. And so we, again, it's like I said the other day, like, do we want to play better up front? Yes. Now, you don't go score on 75% of your drives, touchdowns, without doing a lot of really good things up front. So, yeah, we want to play better. Also, our standard's pretty high.
You mentioned that left tackle spot. We're now getting into week 6, and usually when there's a rotating on the offensive line, you kind of sort it out week 2, week 3. Now we're getting deeper into the season. Are you comfortable having that rotation indefinitely, or is the goal to find clarity there and a rock-solid starting 5 to move forward with?
I think the goal is just to get the most production possible. I hate to define it, kind of before it happens. We've had some injury issues with both of the guys that have played there that has maybe kept it from playing out like you would expect in your mind. And so as those guys get back healthy, which this week will probably be the healthiest that those two guys have been since we started, which is a good thing. And if one guy wins it outright, great. But if the best thing to help us produce is to rotate those guys and keep them fresh, then certainly not against it. I just think it's about production and about who can go out there and get the job done. And if it's best with 2 people, it's best with 2 people.
You're listening to the head coach, Lincoln Riley, on Trojans Live. And listen, we've talked a ton, obviously, all season about Jordan Addison and Mario Williams. I'm interested in that sort of next group of receivers because I thought some of those guys started to perk up a little bit. Brendan Rice, a little bit of a breakout game. Kyron Hudson gets his first touchdown. What are you seeing from sort of the rest behind those top 2? Yeah,
they're doing a really nice job. Taj Washington had a huge game for us at Oregon State. Yeah. I mean, he was so clutch, especially on that last drive. And thought he continued his very strong play the other night. Had the big third down catch. Did some great things in the blocking game. Just really had a big impact. Brendan Rice, as you mentioned, had 3 explosive plays. 2 down the sideline, and obviously the huge catch on the 3rd and long. And he's doing some really nice things on tape. He is. I feel like he's right on the verge of a breakout game for us. Obviously seeing Kyron step in there, make some big plays. We didn't have Bynum available, and Kyron really stepped in there and did some nice things, as did Kyle Ford. And so, we've been happy with that group. We've had some really good production. We've got some guys that are eager to step up, and it was cool to see some of those guys get some opportunities and make the most of them.
On Kyron's touchdown, can you tell the story real quick? It seemed like there was a funny exchange with you and Caleb.
Yeah, there was. I won't go into too much detail, but there was a little exchange on what we wanted, and at the end of the day, those guys got to make the call, and he knows I have trust and faith in them when they see things to attack it, and so I tell him, if you go against me, you better be right.
Got it right.
And he was.
Coach, speaking of guys on the verge, you watch Raleek Brown and he's just on the cusp of just breaking out some big runs there, and you can see the patience in him. It's rare, I think, to see a freshman who kind of gets the patience of waiting for blocks and waiting for make his move, and then he can strike. What do you see from a young Raleek Brown? It's kind of cool to watch a young player like that kind of understand it.
Yeah, getting better. It's obviously good to finally have him back healthy. I mean, last week he still wasn't Still wasn't 100%, but he's pretty darn close to it now. So it was good to see him back, moving a little bit closer to what we're.
That's how I move at 100%. When I'm at 100%.
Wiggle.
Yeah, he is. No, he is. He's a unique athlete. You see it, and you're right. He does have some really nice patience, and I think some of that patience comes from the confidence he has in his athletic abilities. Just knowing that he can make those cuts, and in space that he is gonna, be better than most people. So it is. It's and not only obviously everybody sees the game reps, but so much about it, especially for a young guy like that, is being healthy enough to get the reps in practice, right? So that you can improve, so that you understand the plan, so that you stay sharp and you continue to head in a positive way. And for young guys, I mean, those practice reps are so important. So it's not only it's great to get him in the game, but just the last week or so, just to have him as a full participant in practice and be able to get all that has made a big difference.
I want to go back to your comment about Caleb going against you, because one thing I noticed in this game, it felt like Caleb was making more checks at the line of scrimmage on his own than maybe weeks prior. The Stanford game jumped out to me of the guys looking towards the sideline to you to maybe have a new play or whatnot. Are there certain things in the game plan that make Caleb have more responsibility at the line of scrimmage one week versus maybe not the next week?
That's fair to say. Yeah, I would say it varies, depending on what we're seeing and what our plan of attack is. And then I think some of that is just over time, my confidence in him to get those right. His confidence to go up there and make it, because standing back there, it's if you're just 80% sure, it's tough to get up there and pull the trigger. And so I think his confidence in what we're doing and what we're seeing, and not just understanding our plan of attack, but also like what are people trying to do to us from a kind of a big picture. And so for him to be able to see that and make some really good decisions was nice. And I'm sure we'll continue to lean on him to be able to do it.
Jordan Moore, Sean Cody, Max Brown, the head coach, Lincoln Riley. Appreciate you joining us for another segment as we take a look at what is a big-time matchup coming to the Coliseum. Washington State, they should be a top 25 team. Honestly, they sit there right at 26. 6 of the top 26 teams are in the Pac-12, and so this is a good one. They had Oregon dead to rights in that game and let it go at the end. But it's just a big opportunity. I mean, when you look at some of the top teams in the Pac-12, a lot of them you're going to have to take on the road. This is one you get in your house. So how do you view it coming into Saturday?
It's an important game. I mean, in any way you slice it, it's a really good football team coming in. I think it's the best football team that we've played up to this point. And they, I would say, equally good on both sides of the ball. The quarterback that they've brought in board is doing a really nice job for them. He's an athletic player. They do a really nice job in their system. Giving him kind of the freedom, you can tell, to use that athleticism to make plays. And they're obviously going to put the ball in the air quite a bit and challenge you that way. And then defensively, doing a tremendous job. I mean, Coach Dickert comes from that type of background, so no surprise to see them playing as well as they have. They really fly around, create a lot of negative plays, a lot of sacks. Just very a challenging matchup on both sides. I mean, what you would expect out of a really good football team coming in here.
Coach, get into the defense a little more. You talk about Coach Dickert and what he's been able to do. You hear about Washington State, you think about offense and throwing around and spreading the ball around. What is that defense? What kind of challenges do they present?
They present a lot. I mean, they do a lot of really great things up front. Very, very active with the front. They're moving targets a lot of times and really do a good job trying to keep you off balance there. And then you can just tell with the personnel that they've built. I mean, they've got in the back end and really the back seven. I mean, they've got everybody that can run. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a very fast, explosive defense. They do some really creative things in the blitz game. Some really nice things coverage-wise. You can tell they've got a system that they believe very much in. You can tell the guys know it very, very well and don't make many mistakes. And then also you see the creativity of a staff that adds new wrinkles and does some new things that can really, up to this point have really given most offenses that they've played a lot of trouble.
It's 2 straight weeks you've faced transfer quarterbacks that were productive at their previous schools. When those transfers were announced in the offseason, are you guys going out of your way to watch film of those guys and prep in advance before the fall gets here, or do you just worry about it once the fall's here and you got the film from their current school?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on when you play them. Meaning like, you play a guy, real early in the season and maybe you need a little bit more tape. It's something you can go back on. We did go back and take a look at these guys a little bit, just knowing that this game was going to come, right here around mid-season. But And the flip side of that is we've obviously got a lot of tape on these guys now, so you've got a good feel for what this kid's capable of and what they like to do with them. Also, it's the same offensive coordinator, ironically, who I coached in college, Eric Morris, and so he's done a great job at the stops he's been, and having him there with his quarterback, you can tell there's a familiarity and it shows up on tape.
Did you also coach the receiver coach, Joel Filani? I was doing the year crossover there.
Yeah, we had a little bit of crossover. I wasn't Joel's position coach. I was Eric's position coach. I think Joel's last year, I might have been my last year as a GA there, but we've had some crossover, and yeah, I mean, obviously know Clay very well, Clay McGuire, all those guys. So a lot of good friends on that sideline.
Yeah, speaking of the portal, outside of some of the big names, you guys took in a bunch of guys, some of which don't have a ton of production behind them. What did you see in some of the players, particularly defensively? I mean, we got to know Tyrone Taleni on Saturday, interviewed him after a game, had a big game, sack and a half. Some of those guys that didn't necessarily hit at their last schools, how are you guys evaluating them outside of just production?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit position by position and what were our needs at that point. We had a few positions, defensive line being one of them, that we knew we had to take bodies, right? We had to, no matter what, we had to bring some guys in that had production, and that's ultimately, a lot of times, even in the portal, the toughest ones to find. And Tyrone was a great example of a guy that had limited experience in football, but there were some reps at Kansas State that we watched that really caught our eye, and we thought they were doing at the time something very, very drastically different than we do schematically. And watching him, it was like projecting, all right, yeah, we could see where maybe he wasn't a perfect fit in this scheme, but a few of the things that he did, we said, hey, you know what? This could really translate well into what we do, and he could be just a better fit for our scheme than theirs. That was our opinion. And so I think he's an example of a guy I think he's getting better because he didn't play much football to begin with leading up to it, but I think he's also getting better because, in my opinion, he's in a much better scheme for his ability, and I think we're seeing that.
Coach, one of the positions coming to the season that was a question mark, not good or bad, just didn't know a lot about, was defensive backs. And it's really become, I think, one of the strengths on the defense with Mekhi back there, the PBUs, the interceptions. How has that gone from a question mark to really a strength so fast on this defense? And where do you think that comes from?
Well, I give the players credit. I think we've got some really good competitive depth there, and we've been able, especially from spring to fall, getting some guys back, adding some players. We added some real competition and depth across the board, and that made us better. And then certainly you got to give Coach Crench, Coach Williams, those guys a big, obviously a lot of credit in it, because they've done a tremendous job not only developing and evaluating, but trying to find that right mix of guys to get on the field. We've used some guys at different positions. We were forced to do it in the spring just because of limited numbers, but in some ways that might have been the best thing that ever happened to us, because it did kind of force us to mix and match, and we found out pretty quickly what we had, added a few pieces here, and then they've really taken off and playing well.